exposed probably around 8 years of age. Now I feel bad, I feel shame, but I still return to it again and again and again. And one time became things that had more serious legal consequences. I know it messed with my sexual relations with my wife. Pornography dehumanizes the hell out of everybody. You're like, well, how long is this grade of porn going to be enough? It's like, well, let's see if we can just pay for something on the internet and meet up with somebody. I was just miserable. I was tired of living that way. I saw Nate's program. I was like, I need to deal with this. Getting sober is like, oh my gosh, my clarity, my mental state is so much more stable, more clear. Like I'm attuned to myself consistently. I'm grounded consistently. And take it from somebody who's been free of it for 6 months.
Hey, what's up everybody? I'm really excited to be bringing you this video today. We're gonna be interviewing one of my clients. Let's call him Jason, who got into orbital recovery about 7 months ago, deeply struggling with pornography addiction, anxiety, and going through a really nasty divorce. Now, some 7 months later, he's actually 7 months free from pornography. He is free from anxiety and is on the other side of this divorce, beginning to experience healthy relationships in his life again. Jason has a really incredible story, and I'm very excited for you guys to get to benefit from his experience. Now, due to the circumstances surrounding his recent divorce, Jason has asked me to keep his identity private, hence why his voice has been altered and his face has been kept blurred throughout the video. Without further ado, let's get into it. My first question is if you can give us a brief overview of your background and your history with pornography.
Sure. So that's exposed probably around 8 years of age at a friend's house. Grew up in my age. Internet was just reaching into people's houses versus like before it was just library stuff. Saw it at a friend's house. I can still see the images in my head today, what I saw then, and slowly built. But as my family got a computer, I was hiding. I ruined several of them with the stuff I was downloading. I didn't really realize I had an issue. Definitely went through a lot of shame of like, oh, I want to do this, so I do it. Now I feel bad, I feel shame, but I still return to it again and again and again. And did that and just wrote a lot of shame through that. Started dating pretty seriously and was going to get married, carrying a lot of shame about, man, do I really want to carry this into a marriage? Almost got some help just because of the guilt of it, but talked myself out of it, got married, still had this porn issue, and basically just hid it out of shame. But it messed with my sexual relations with my wife and maybe not prevented, but didn't help us get any closer. I'll say that. Maybe isn't ultimately what drove us apart, but definitely didn't help. Didn't have a lot of anxiety growing up, but just had anxiety increasingly more and more and more. And I mean, at times was just extremely debilitating in my, mid-20s. And I was like, man, how am I going to manage this? And I tried managing it a lot of different ways, but ultimately that extreme anxiety and the porn usage, like I was just miserable and I was tired of living that way. And that I saw Nate's program. I was like, I need to deal with this, and didn't do it to make anxiety go away. I didn't know that'd be one of the gifts of that going away when I finally sobered up for an extended amount of time. But it's been one of the greatest gifts in getting sober is like, oh my gosh, my clarity, my mental state is so much more stable, more clear. Like I'm attuned to myself consistently. I'm grounded consistently. And yeah, that's just kind of the, executive level overview of my history with pornography addiction. And I'm sitting here at about 6 months of being cleaned up and really love the benefits and can't wait to see what more comes from it. So.
Yeah, man, there's so much in what you just said that I loved. One of the things that I've seen in my own journey and that I see in pretty much everybody's journey, when we're in active addiction, there's this phenomenon that happens where we do things that are shameful, and then as a response, we do even more things that are shameful. It's like I feel ashamed, so I do things that cause me more shame. And riding that shame roller coaster is just miserable.
Oh God, it's terrible.
Yeah. And so I appreciate you.
It ain't easy to break that shame cycle either. I mean,
Yeah, man, absolutely. And, I also just want to give you huge congratulations on the 6 months. I mean, I think you've been one of the more coachable students that I've ever come across in terms of the way that you got into the program. You took everything very seriously from the start. You applied yourself and you were open to things changing. What I saw from you is like, here's the thing to do. And then you were like, okay, I'll go do it. And
Right.
doing the meditations and the different practices and seeing you prioritize your outer circle and doing everything that you've done has just been really incredible to see. And it's been a real honor to walk with you for your first 6 months of sobriety. So I'm
Appreciate
really
that.
glad to have you in the program.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's been amazing. It's just like, before it's like you couldn't go a few hours, let alone a day or a few days or a week. I mean, occasionally that happened, but like once you just did it for just a little bit, like the momentum was just amazing. I'm like, oh God, why is this really that hard all along? This is all I had to do. I mean, not to make it small or diminish it, but it's just like, why didn't I do this sooner? I mean, I couldn't, but or I would have, but I don't know. I'm just thankful for that.
Yeah. 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 I know that's the one of the core principles that we talk about that's at the heart of all addiction recovery, whether it's inside this program or a 12-step program, is the idea that addiction recovery happens through connection. There's
Hmm.
a way that we receive the power to get and stay sober when we make the decision to stop doing things on our own and connect to a sort of higher power, if you will, that does have the
Sure.
power to help us get sober. And it's like that realization of, man, my house is on fire and there's been a fire department the entire time. But I've just spent like a decade just like sitting in the burning
Mhm.
building. Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you bringing that up.
You're completely redoing the gratification, like instant, instant, instant when we're in addiction. But like, I don't really get that gratification of like, oh, I did good, or oh, this feels nice. It's a different feeling versus like, oh, this is going to take a month before I can actually feel results. Today's day and
Yeah.
age is not used to having to wait for results. We want it now. But
Yeah.
I don't know. Is it your program? Either the pain of discipline or the pain of disappointment. I don't know. Maybe another book I read.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm sure some variation of that quote is inevitably located in the program somewhere. But to be caught in addiction is to be caught in this pattern of constantly sacrificing future Nate or future, let's say, Jason's needs over the long-term needs. So we're sacrificing the future for the present just continually. It puts us in this pattern of just we wake up the next day and it's like, I know there's a monster waiting for me tomorrow, so I'm just going to escape it for today. And we just run from
No,
ourselves and from the pain and from the discomfort.
terrible way to live. Did it too long.
Absolutely. And finding the support and the connection that we need to stabilize ourselves and then turn and now be able to say that, like, I'm ready to go through the short period of withdrawals. It's temporary. I'm going to get through it. It actually is never as bad as we imagine it's going to be. And then
Right.
things just start to get better. And then we have that realization of like, man, like this is what I was afraid of the whole time. Like I was afraid of stopping, and this is what stopping resulted in. Now that I have the support to do it, it can be a very disillusioning experience. And the angle that I always take on it is we never want to feel upset, like, man, I can't believe I didn't do this earlier. But instead be like, man, thank God I
Thank God
found
I
this when I
finally
did.
did it. Thank God it didn't go any
Right.
longer than I did. Right.
Absolutely. I'm wondering if there's any particular pains or consequences during your active addiction that you feel most grateful for now having resolved.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, I think the main thing, without getting extremely specific, would just be the mental health aspects of the depression, the anxiety. I mean, same coin, different sides in my experience. And then just the way that manifests in your life, with your relationships, or like with my relationships, and just like the personal stability, the self-worth. Porn did not do me any favors. I mean, I'm thankful for the lessons now. It's made me who I am. Wouldn't get here without that path, but there were a lot of miserable years in there where I didn't feel like I had any control over my life. Basically, it was just chaos with little glimpses of temporary peace from time to time, instead of like, no, I feel pretty peaceful and happy most of the time. There's little storms, but I return to the state of peace. It was the opposite of, it's just like, well, it's chaos and occasionally I get a break. Occasionally is kind of the best way I know how to put it.
I'm curious what so far, I mean, you mentioned the relief from the anxiety, obviously, and the things that kind of led to that, I imagine would be, probably the bigger shift that you've had in the program. But I'm curious if there's any other insights or moments of realization or any other shifts that you felt like have happened for you inside of the program?
Definitely my connection to myself and my higher power. That's been a huge shift. That's been pretty monumental in my recovery. And just the ability to self-monitor. Before, I just kind of get blown around wherever life was going to take me without much control, versus now that I'm not riding these dopamine highs and subsequent lows, it's like, okay, I've stabilized that area of my life. When something happens, I can analyze it for what it is, not, okay, well, is this real life? Is this because I've been binging on porn? What is this? And really not being able to figure it out because just too many variables in the mix. But like, just that's been nice to where I can go, okay, I've been really good for a while. I'm feeling a little bit out of whack today. Why is that? And instead of like, I don't know, I just don't know, I can go, okay, well, I've been thinking about this. This is going on. I didn't sleep very good. I chose a meal that I never choose, and I know it's not good for me. Oh, no wonder I don't feel good. Well, let's take a step back and do what we did 2 days ago when we were feeling better. We're feeling good. Kick that into gear. In a pretty short amount of time, it's like, oh, I feel good again. Or being able to pause connecting with somebody and say, hey, I just need a little bit of time to myself, just to reconnect to me, feeling the confidence to state my need and then fulfill the need. It's like, oh, okay, I'm good. Yeah, let's continue forward. I just needed a minute to myself, not being afraid to ask for it, right? Having the confidence. It's like, no, I can ask for my needs. It's okay. Those are just a few shifts for me. I mean, the confidence, the connection to self, the lower anxiety, just all that. Getting all those things kind of at bay, I mean, that's just given me so much momentum. I'm better in life as a dad, as a partner, as an employee, as a friend, son, brother. I mean, I'm better in all those areas. And I mean, it just all picks up more and more and more momentum to where it's like, okay, life is good. So
The core really that I hear tying all that together is this maybe newfound sense. I was going to say rebuilt, but maybe it's newfound for the first time. This ability to be grounded and centered and to regulate your emotions in a healthy way.
yes,
Where,
because porn was attempting to regulate it for me. I appreciated it was trying to help me. It was never made to do it, right? Our definition of lust, right?
absolutely. And I'm curious if you could just describe a little bit about what it has been like to work with me and what it's been like to be inside the program.
Yeah, so Nate's great. He's got a lot of high quality content that I really identify. And, I knew Nate and I would do well together when I initially consulted with him. I was able to identify with his story. It's like, I get that. My story, feeling like it overlaps with Nate's story so much, makes the content that much more relatable to me, makes it more real for me. It motivates me to like want to dive in it more. But I also appreciate that Nate doesn't baby me, calls me on my BS when he needs to. Ricky calls me on my BS when he needs to too, big time. But yeah, it's a good balance. And I like being in the groups. First, I wasn't so sure just because the whole experience was new to me. But, realized pretty quick, this is a great group of guys. I can just be completely transparent here and it's great. And you kind of figure out who you connect best with and you have your side conversations with them. And we do all this via Zoom, and some of us have never seen each other in real life, but it doesn't really feel that way. It feels genuine, but it's different in the best way.
I really appreciate that feedback, and I'm very glad to hear that you feel like the environment that we have inside of the program really enabled you to feel that you belong to a group of people who understand your problem, and then most importantly that you can feel connected to because there's a real environment of safety and transparency and vulnerability.
Yeah, very genuine. Not bullshitty. If it were bullshitty, it wouldn't work. But yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and yeah, I think we need to get Ricky some kind of name tag or something,
Right.
being like the
We're gonna get his ass bubble popper. We're gonna get his ass a little pin, and he's gonna have a balloon. He's gonna have a balloon in his like personal emoji or whatever. So pop.
Yeah, he is our resident bubble popper.
Yeah, that's my son says. Popped you. So that's Ricky, but in the best way. When you need a guy like that, a lot of people are afraid they're not comfortable confronting somebody. Like they're good at patting everybody on the back saying, oh, good job, but like you gotta have that guy who can tactfully pop the bubble. And Ricky's perfect for that. He
Absolutely.
cares. He cares about you, but like you need him to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the problems that I see, and it's been a journey for me as well, is there's a lot of focus, shall we say, in the personal development community on cultivating self-love and self-acceptance. I would say there's a huge role for that, but one of the traps that we fall into is that we mistake pandering to our bullshit as compassion.
Yeah, that's not love at all. That's like the opposite of it.
Right.
Like, really
Right.
if I really love my friend, I'm not gonna just pat him on the back and be like, no, you're being a dumbass. And I'm a real friend for telling you that. Instead of being,
Absolutely.
whatever works for you, man, you go for it. Keep driving. The cliff's right there. So yes, exactly. You're spot on.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's very important to learn. And this is something that I hope every single one of you guys who being in the program, you really get a taste for is how to lovingly pierce through the bullshit, to strike bedrock and to strike the truth, which oftentimes is not comfortable. But I think of all the people that I've ever met, Ricky has an innate capacity to lovingly pierce through the bullshit and hit that uncomfortable bedrock. So
Yeah. Or he knows the power of what and how questions to help you just realize it yourself so he doesn't have to say it. So
exactly. Yeah. Well, cool. The last question that I have is where do you think you would be today if you did not join this program?
pretty damn miserable, continued misery. Most importantly, I don't think I'd have the connection with my son that I do, which you'd think, well, how does that affect your relationship with a child? When I'm not preoccupied and I'm dealing with my stress in healthy ways, it just messes with things in ways I don't think we even know. But I'd hate to imagine, because pornography started to become things that had more serious legal consequences. Luckily, that was a very short-lived window and I woke up, but without anything stopping me, I'd hate to see what kind of mess I could have got myself in. Legally, legally sucks, but more importantly, just my own self-created misery. I'd just be anxious, wouldn't be able to focus at work. I wouldn't be enjoying it near as much as I do because I wouldn't be able to predict when I'd be able to focus or not. So, yeah, there's just a lot of things that I'm just so thankful I'm not in the state of mind that I was before I started this program because I couldn't see it at that time, but hindsight being 2020, it's like, God, that is no way to live. Pornography will screw up every area of your life. You may not be able to specifically identify how it's screwing it up, but it'll just mess with things. Yeah, you pick an area and I can tell you how it'll mess with it. But I couldn't see it until I was out of it. Yeah, when I was in it, couldn't see it. But once I got out, that's like, oh, that's how that messed that up. So
Yeah, that's beautifully said. And I appreciate you bringing in the legal consequences component. We talk about that in the program because for me, having spent years in this area and working my own recovery and meeting hundreds of people through attending, dozens and dozens of meetings, I've met a tremendous number of people who have incurred legal consequences from this. And I would go so far to say that the flirting with the line of what is potentially legally consequential is the norm. There's more people struggling with pornography addiction who are probably flirting with that line than most of us would like to admit. Not only, man, I get caught watching porn at work, that's one thing. Then they look at what I was watching, and that's another thing. Or I end up bouncing between weird sites and these dark corners of the internet, and I end up on a website where there's illegal pornography, and I didn't even realize it. And then I have the FBI showing up at my doorstep. Like, I literally know people who have had that experience happen to them. And so,
and I do too. Met them in some of my S groups, but and for me, it's like dopamine, right? You're like, well, how long is this grade of porn going to be enough? It's like, well, let's see if we can just pay for something on the internet and meet up with somebody. And pornography dehumanizes the hell out of everybody and separates consequence and reward. And then you're like, oh shit, I'm going to go to jail. I didn't get there, but I could have.
And that's a typical pattern of escalation as well. Is it's like pornography, and then it turns into something else. It's like paying for something we never thought we would pay for.
Right.
We're starting to use sexual services that cost exorbitant amounts of money that are also not exactly legal.
Putting ourselves at a terrible amount of risk, just the living the dual life. Like, oh, this could affect this area. Like your mind has separated them, but it's like, no, that's going to come crashing together. This little area of your life you thought was a secret is going to burn the whole place down.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And my last question here for you would be, what would you tell somebody who maybe is sitting on the fence and is unsure about joining this program to get this problem solved?
You don't know what you don't know, and you may not know just how much trouble you're in. Now's the time. Obviously, something has led you to this program. You got to strike while the iron's hot, because it'll be real easy to convince yourself not to do it. Pornography use is normal. Everybody does it. No big deal. Well, it's a silent killer, and it's going to try to kill you. It's going to rob you of everything good in your life. You may not realize that right now, but take it from somebody who's been free of it for 6 months, which isn't that long, but I've seen so much benefit in 6 months that, like, yeah, you're crazy if you don't just get in it and go. I mean, best gift you could ever give yourself in the right now. Get free of this. You get 6 months into it, you get serious about it, like, you've got so many gifts waiting for you. You don't know what they are, but I promise you they're there if you just do the work. So yeah, don't hesitate.
Love that. Yeah. And maybe a quick little bonus question would be, and this is kind of personal, do you feel like you got more value from this program than your initial investment was?
Oh God, yes. I mean, all that initial investment did was make it real enough for me to take it serious. That's the only purpose. But yes, value, far and exceeds what I paid. I mean, by a long shot. I'm glad I paid what I paid, because if it had been free, I probably would have fizzled out in a few weeks just as the pain subsided. But that investment kept me in it. And yeah, the contents, I mean, it's worth 10 times what I paid for it. I couldn't have paid 10 times that for it. That would have been a barrier. But yeah, it's by far and away worth it.
Phenomenal, man. Yeah. Well, like I said, it's been an absolute pleasure having you in the program. And it's been a real gift to get to walk with you by your side for your first 6 months of sobriety and recovery. And it's been a pleasure to see you grow and to watch a lot of these issues start to resolve. And I'm just super excited to see where this journey continues to take you.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, man. Like, it's great. It's good life. Didn't know what I was missing out on, but damn, I'm sure glad that with everybody's help and, not taking too much credit, but went through the steps and did the work to get where I'm at today. Didn't know what I was missing out on.
Yeah. Awesome, man. I think that's a beautiful place to go ahead and stop. I really appreciate you providing your feedback and your experience. And, I think people will hear your story and relate to it. And I think as a consequence of sharing your story today, I imagine that hopefully over the next couple of years, there's dozens and dozens or hundreds of people who hear what you just said and they get motivated to get the help they need and quit because you're willing to share that. So I want to thank you for that. And
Oh yeah, well, it's the gift of imperfection. You know how it is.
Oh yeah. Right on, man. I'll let you get on with the rest of your night.
Sure.
But before we let go, I did want to ask if you had any final questions or anything I can do for you, or you can call it here.
I did want to share something in today that I ran out of time. You probably know I chewed tobacco for the last year because of the divorce and everything. Well, I got sick with mono and I didn't feel like doing that shit. And I was like, well, this is the perfect time to quit, 'cause I feel like shit anyway. So, like, yes, gotten rid of one more in my life. The caffeine's going to stay, but the nicotine's gone. So it's a good thing.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yes, I know it's really dumb, but it's just like, hey, I thought I was going to be a lot dumber when I didn't have nicotine kicking me in the pants all the time, but I can actually still think just fine. So amazing.
Man, yeah, it's crazy when we're in active addiction of some kind and we're using the enes, as you put them, the nicotine and the caffeine to medicate.
Yeah.
We're just medicating the aftermath of acting out. And typically I've seen this pattern a lot. It's like when you get some stability away from pornography, all of a sudden you might feel a natural desire to start putting some of those other things down too, because you can feel that there isn't the aftermath to medicate anymore. And now
Right.
maybe there's this inner intuition that it might actually be blocking you from a better experience of life and a more stable and emotionally healthy experience. And so that's awesome, though. Nicotine is a particularly difficult one to kick. So
Yeah. Well, it's like I'd steered clear of it before, but it's through the divorce I did, and I liked it. I'm not gonna lie, it was enjoyable, but it's just like, this may not be enjoyable should this, do what tobacco tends to do to people's insides. So it's like, okay, let's just get over this now. Let's just rip the Band-Aid off. I already feel like crap. Instead of like, okay, I'm riding along. Oh, I'm gonna quit. Oh, this hurts. Like, I'm already hurt. Let's just get it over with. So
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome, man.
little stuff, little stuff, but also
Yeah. Yeah. Cool, man. Glad to hear that.
yeah,
All right, man. Well, we can go ahead and
Cool.
call it here.
it's good.
Yeah.
Glad to have you back and looking forward to seeing you on future calls. So
Sounds like a plan, man. Good to chat.